I'd like to welcome in now Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, Senior Fellow at Defense Priorities, host of Daniel Davis Deep Dive on YouTube. Lieutenant Colonel, always great to see you. We were just talking about this last week. This is now the second NATO country incursion in less than a week. Is this an accident or is Russia testing NATO?
We really don't know a lot for a fact. All we know is a drone that apparently Romania didn't know where it came from was in its airspace. It doesn't appear to have been an attack drone. Looks more like it was a reconnaissance drone of some sort because it ended up flying out under its own power. They didn't take it under fire. So we actually don't know where it came from, who was piloting it, et cetera. So I hesitate to just say, yes, it was Russia because, well, we like to blame everything on Russia because it was bad. But because you have to think, well, what is going to be Russia's incentive to take an action like this, which would certainly be provocative. Maybe it was to send a message if they did it, but I don't see a lot to gain from them. So I hesitate to ascribe culpability to Russia because we simply don't know. But we can't be taking actions, especially at the NATO level, by saying this represents a dangerous escalation or so, because it may not represent anything at all. And we definitely have incentive to make sure that this doesn't escalate anywhere.
Well, so, okay, Lieutenant Colonel, I actually find that very interesting because if you're saying we don't definitively know that this was a Russian drone, why do you think Russia is automatically being blamed?
Right, because we automatically blame it because Russia's evil, as we always know. That's how they're characterized. Ukraine's all good, Russia's all bad. So if something happened, definitely was Russia's fault. I mean, that's kind of been the default position throughout the entire war, and I certainly can't imagine anyone would change. Now, ordinarily, you would think, okay, well, a drone flew into NATO airspace. Let's investigate this to find out where it came from, because a drone. Look, lots of individuals have drones as well. It well could have been Russia. I don't have any knowledge. Let me just say, but I would make sure I would know definitively where it came from exactly. And it seems like we would have whether it's with AWACS or other means of interpreting where flight paths went that we could know. And if it's driven back to something in Russian-controlled territory, then now we can have that conversation. But I think we need to have that certainty before NATO goes and taking a lot of definitive statements first.
All right, that's fair. So speaking of this certainty, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte announcing this new Eastern Sentry operation. He made that announcement 2 days after those at least 19 Russian drones crossed into Polish airspace. First of all, Lieutenant Colonel, what more can you tell us about this operation and then how this could potentially apply now to Romania?
Well, yeah, it's the eastern flank of NATO, and they're saying that because of this incursion here, they want to beef up their eastern flank support, air support especially. And Kaja Kallas, basically the foreign minister for the European Union, has said we need to have a drone wall for our alliance and for our country to penetrate anything that could come in from Russia, et cetera. And that's it's not a bad idea to have a good air defense protection. That's something that's definitely necessary in a modern environment like that. And it's appropriate, I think, for your flank security. But one person who's not really a fan of it is Volodymyr Zelensky, who actually complained that, wait, you're diverting away limited resources in air defense capacity away from Ukraine up to NATO. But, we have a very limited number of these devices. And, so now they're put on the flank here. But listen, I don't think there's any possibility that Russia is going to launch some sort of drone attack against NATO, because that would automatically draw us Article 5 into a war. And that's what Russia's been trying hard to avoid. And even this incursion that's allegedly 19, and by the way, I've only seen wreckage of about 3 that at least it's been publicly acknowledged. So we'll see what that turns out to be. But all the ones were apparently unarmed. So it wasn't even supposed to be an attack then. So we just don't know a lot about this, but I think it's in everybody's interest that we need to cool the jets here and make sure we don't get anything ramped up that could actually cause a friction and an armed conflict between the two sides, because then everybody's going to lose at that point.
Well, so Lieutenant Colonel, you mentioned the fact that, now there's this diverting of air defense resources from Ukraine. What does all of this mean for regional security? And what do you think Putin's endgame is in all of this?
Well, we know for sure what Putin's endgame is. It's to accomplish what he set out as his objectives at the special military operation in February 2022, which he continues to reiterate without change, that it's the territorial acquisition of the 4 oblasts that they have annexed back in 2022. and a demilitarization and a denazification, so-called, from the Russian side onto the Ukraine side. And those are huge, huge asks for the Russian side. And they have said, in fact, Putin did directly and unambiguously in Beijing when he was there for the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. He said, we will attain our objectives either at the negotiating table or on the battlefield, but we will get them one way or the other. So there's no mystery about where Russia is on this. The question is, where are we on this? And we're literally all over the map. And some saying, hey, we should continue to bolster up military capabilities for Ukraine. Others say, no, we need to go on the sanctions side. Still others are saying, we need to do all this stuff. But then you get to the point that we have very limited resources, and there's no evidence that sanctions are going to force Russia to do anything. And China just announced earlier today that if we try this issue of having more secondary tariffs on China over the Russian oil thing, there will be retaliation. So there is a cost if we want to go down that road, and virtually no chance of success. So we're really kind of in a limited situation here.
Yeah, certainly not easy decisions in all of this. Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, appreciate your time as always.